Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into a really interesting situation unfolding in Tamil Nadu. It involves the Supreme Court, the Enforcement Directorate, the ED, and the state's massive liquor business, TASMAC.
Yes, the Supreme Court has actually put a temporary stop, a stay, on the ED's investigation into TASMAC. And they use some pretty strong language while doing it.
The strong language, like what?
Well, warning the ED about potentially crossing all limits and even violating the federal structure, that's quite significant coming from the top court. It really flags this as a major issue.
Okay, so this happened on May 22nd, 2025. The Supreme Court halted the ED's money laundering probe into TASMAC itself. You mentioned the court's reasoning.
Exactly. The bench, led by the Chief Justice, expressed fundamental doubts right at the outset. They questioned how TASMAC, the corporation, could face criminal proceedings when the original police complaints, the FIRs, were apparently only against individuals.
Ah, I see. So the court is asking if the ED is maybe overstepping by going after the whole organization instead of just the people named in the initial reports.
Precisely. It signals a potential issue of overreach by the central agency right away.
Got it. So let's back up a bit. For listeners, what exactly is TASMAC?
Sure. TASMAC is the Tamil Nadu State Marketing Corporation. It's state-owned, and it basically has a monopoly on retail liquor sales across the state. Thousands of shops, a huge operation.
And the ED started looking into them earlier this year. What were they alleging?
They launched an investigation alleging a huge scam, as they put it. They mentioned a figure around 1,000 crore.
1,000 crore, that's a massive number.
It is, and they claimed it involved politicians and various liquor interests. The ED said their probe was based on FIRs filed over several years by Tamil Nadu's own vigilance department.
So the state's anti-corruption body had already filed complaints. What did the ED do then?
Well, things escalated in early March. The ED conducted raids, quite widespread ones actually, something like 20 locations.
20, including TASMAC's main office.
Yes, including their headquarters in Chennai, all part of this money laundering investigation.
But the Tamil Nadu officials have a different take on this, don't they?
They do. They argue that, yes, the state did register dozens of FIRs, but crucially, those were against individuals, specific private players, some officials, for alleged corruption going back as far as 2014.
So the state is saying we were dealing with the individuals involved.
Exactly. Their point seems to be that the ED making the corporation itself the target is a new and perhaps unjustified angle. They feel they were already tackling the corruption issue at the individual level.
Okay, so what exactly does the ED suspect the corporation, TASMAC, was doing wrong? What are the specifics of their allegations?
The ED's suspicion seems to be focused on manipulation from within TASMAC, working with associated distilleries. They pointed to things like irregularities in how liquor shop licenses were tendered out.
Irregularities like?
Like instances where there was apparently only a single bidder for a license, which, immediately raises questions about whether the process was genuinely competitive.
Right, that doesn't sound quite right. What else?
They also allege more complex stuff. Schemes involving unaccounted cash, inflated expenses, the usual markers in these kinds of financial investigations.
How do they claim this worked?
The alleged method involved inflating bills, routing them through shell companies, fake companies set up just to move money.
Okay.
Then commissions were supposedly deducted and kickbacks were paid back in cash to distilleries, brokers, maybe others. It's this alleged network that the ED believes adds up to that 1,000 crore figure, potentially involving political figures.
Now, beyond the money side of things, there was another controversy around the ED's methods during those raids, wasn't there? Something about phones.
Yes, that's a really important point. TASMAC's lawyers raised this in court. They claim that during the raids, ED agents seized employees' personal mobile phones and cloned them, copied all the data.
Cloned them? Wow. That sounds invasive.
It certainly raises red flags. The lawyers for Tamil Nadu expressed serious concerns about data privacy. They actually asked the court to stop the ED from using any of the data copied from those devices.
So it's not just about the alleged scam, but also about how the investigation itself was conducted. Concerns about civil liberties, essentially.
Absolutely. It adds a whole other dimension to the case. Which brings us back to that Supreme Court hearing on May 22nd. You said the court really pushed back.
That's the report. The bench apparently grilled the ED's lawyer, the additional solicitor general.
And that central question kept coming up.
Right. The Chief Justice directly asked, how can the law justify holding the corporation criminally liable when the underlying FIRs were against individuals? It really seems like the court is zeroing in on the legal foundation of the ED's case against TASMAC itself.
And that's when they made those strong statements we mentioned earlier.
Exactly, saying the ED was potentially crossing all limits and violating the federal structure. That's pretty direct criticism.
It is, and that phrase, violating the federal structure, is key here. Could you maybe unpack that a bit for us in this context?
Sure, so federalism fundamentally is about the division of powers between the central government and the state governments in India. They each have their own areas of authority.
Yeah.
TASMAC is a state-owned entity. It belongs to the Tamil Nadu government. The Supreme Court seems concerned that the ED, a central agency, might be encroaching on the state's domain by targeting the state's corporation directly, especially when the alleged crimes seem linked to specific people.
So the court is suggesting the focus should perhaps remain on those individuals, at least based on the current evidence presented by the FIRs.
That seems to be the implication, that targeting the entire state-run body might be an overstep under these circumstances.
And the court didn't just voice concerns, they took action.
Yes, definite action. They issued a formal notice to the ED, basically asking them to justify their position. And, crucially, they ordered a stay.
A stay on everything.
A stay on all further steps in the money laundering case against TASMAC. So, for now, no new charges against the corporation, no more raids targeting it specifically, no seizing of its assets.
That's a significant pause. And did the court say anything more about the phone data privacy concerns?
They did acknowledge it. Reports suggest the court noted that if phones were seized, the data needed proper protection, hinting that its use might be restricted later. So they seem sympathetic to that privacy argument, too.
Okay, let's widen the lens a bit. TASMAC isn't just any company for Tamil Nadu, is it? It's financially very important.
Hugely important. Liquor sales through TASMAC are a massive source of revenue for the state government. We're talking, what, over 40,000 crore last year alone?
40,000 crore. Wow. That really underscores why allegations of corruption on the scale the ED mentioned that 1,000 crore would be such a big deal for the state's finances and public services.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And inevitably, there's a political angle to all this.
Of course. How is that playing out?
Well, the Tamil Nadu government is run by the DMK party. They, and particularly Chief Minister Stalin, have framed the ED's actions as heavy-handed, possibly politically motivated. Accusations of the central government using its agencies to harass opposition-ruled states aren't new, and this fits that narrative for them.
Right. And on the other side,
The BJP, which leads the central government, has been quite vocal about alleged corruption within TASMAC under the DMK's watch. So for them, the ED probe is likely seen as a necessary anti-corruption measure.
so you have this sort of tug-of-war narrative, the DMK emphasizing state autonomy and accusing the center of overreach, while the BJP frames it as fighting graft.
Exactly. And then there's the bureaucratic layer, too. If the ED's claims are proven true, it points to potentially deep systemic corruption within TASMAC over years.
But if they aren't proven, or if the investigation is seen as flawed?
Then it raises serious questions about the ED's methods and motivations, especially targeting a state entity based on FIRs against individuals. It puts their tactics under the microscope.
So, pulling this all together, what are the main takeaways for people following this?
Well, I think the biggest one is the Supreme Court really stepping in to emphasize the balance of federal powers. That crossing all limits comment is powerful. It shows the judiciary acting as a check on central agency actions concerning state entities.
Right. And it clearly highlights the friction point when national anti-corruption drives meet state-run businesses. TASMAC, being an arm of the state, makes it especially sensitive. It seems clear the methods used by agencies like the ED in these cases will face intense judicial scrutiny.
Definitely. For the ED, this is a hurdle. They now have to go back to the Supreme Court and really justify their approach, justify targeting the corporation itself based on those initial FIRs against individuals.
And for the Tamil Nadu government.
It's a reprieve, at least for now. A temporary win in pushing back against the central agency's probe into their major revenue generator.
So this deep dive really shows a complex mix, doesn't it? Legal arguments about jurisdiction, huge financial stakes for the state, and undeniable political tensions all woven together.
Absolutely. The Supreme Court's intervention has put a spotlight right on that intersection.
And this isn't just about liquor in Tamil Nadu, is it? The implications feel broader.
They really do. This touches on fundamental questions about the division of power between the center and states in India, about due process and financial crime probes, and, well, the whole intersection of politics and state revenue streams.
It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What does this Supreme Court stance signal about the limits on central agencies when they investigate state-controlled bodies?
And how will the ED respond? Will this shape how similar investigations are handled elsewhere in the country going forward?
It's a fascinating situation. This deep dive into TASMAC and the ED probe shows just how complex these issues are, with the Supreme Court now playing a very central role in this unfolding drama.